Okay, I think it's time.
Well, it's 9 o'clock. I'm very happy to have an opportunity to meet with you guys. I'd like to apologize very much for taking a solid month of vacation and going away from you. I'm still not back. I'm not allowed to bathe a great part of my body. Because number one, I just had cataract surgery done in both eyes, and so that means my face cannot be bathed. So I try to cheat and bathe everything, just stay away from my eyes like a raccoon. And this morning I looked in the mirror and junk was in my eyes, and so I had to get that out. Because every day I get tons of drops dropped into my eyes. If you're watching on YouTube and you'd like to be in a conversation, just shoot the fat with me, come on over to Zoom and we can just talk a little bit today since it's been a while. I have here in my arm what's called a PICC line. And so every day, this here is 53 centimeters long, which is 20, I think it's 20, a little over 22 inches long. It goes into my body here. It comes up around my arm, comes over the top of my chest, comes down and goes into the right, just outside the right vena cava or something like that. It's a vein outside your heart. And that's where the medicine gets dropped in every day. So my wife then, it takes us about at least a half hour to pump the medicine in, and that's fighting all the infections that are in my incision. So the incision was 44 staples long from my sternum down to the private area here and then across to the side. And the staples went this way and then they did something else over here. So up through here in the middle, there's quite a few I'm saying heridas. I didn't mean to say heridas. I can't think of the name, wounds. And so I have a wound vac on. Last night, the wound vac quit working. And so we've been trying to get all that straightened out. I go to the doctor, it seems like almost every day. It's been 35 days since surgery. 36 days counting the day of prep before it all got started. And so anyway, it's been a wild and crazy ride to get to where I am currently today. And I will send out a prayer letter today or tomorrow. I usually can start the day feeling fairly energetic. And by the end of the day, I'm not always as energetic. Depends on how much effort I put in the beginning of the day. I have now preached last Thursday night, Sunday morning, and Sunday afternoon, and had a good time and was able to do that. But currently, they consider me to be cured or cancer-free. The pathology report comes back that they got all the cancer and they checked all the margins, and all of those are clear, and so there should be no cancer. They got they took a piece of diaphragm, they took a piece of pubic bone, and several other places because the cancer I have no adrenal glands, so now I have to take a medicine every day the rest of my life to keep me to make my body function. Your adrenal glands do all sorts of things in you, and I don't have those. So now I have to wear a medic alert bracelet so that they won't kill me. The doctor was so adamant about how easy it is if something happens to me that they would actually give me the wrong medicine. It says that I have Addison disease. JFK had that, by the way, so somebody famous had it, and he was able to live with it. And it says that I'm on steroids, so I will be on steroids till the day that I die. They'll do some scans every 3 months, and so each 3 months we'll find out, yes, he continues to be cancer-free, or no, I'm not cancer-free, because there's a 50-50 chance it comes back. It usually will come back within the first 2 years if it comes back. And so Trent Coker got mad and left. I don't know who PBC is, unless that is Philadelphia Baptist Chapel, maybe. But anyway, I'm sure glad all of y'all are here with us today, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. If you want to send them in the chat or you just want to ask them, I'll be glad to answer them. I started writing the stories again. I got another one out yesterday. That's been 2 since it all went down. Because just to be honest with you, we call it ganas in Spanish. It's the desire. The desire.
Yeah, desire.
The desires and the hungers to do things I used to do. Just they aren't always there. I wake up. I haven't had a bath really, a real bath probably in 31 days. That is more aggravating than I could ever explain to you. I'm pretty well free now to do about anything I want to do, except I got to be here for the scans and all. So that's a kind of a health update I'd like to give you, and I've got a lot of things I want to talk to you about. But let me see if that solved any issues. Anything I didn't say or do, Chris?
So what, how do you feel now?
I get, I don't sleep at night because of, I don't know, all the medicines, I told your mother to drop a medicine yesterday and told her to drop another one today. And so I'm slowly trying to weed off other medicines.
What kind of medicines are you weeding off of? Because there's some you can't weed off of for anything.
They put me on Flomax, which helps you learn how to urinate again once you've been out. I don't know how many of you know what happened, but I was on the table nearly 10 hours. They thought it was going to be a 5-hour surgery. And those in the time of that surgery, they had a specialist whose job was to make sure they didn't hurt my liver. So they picked up my liver, moved it around, looked all around it to make sure there's no cancer, and they're taking cancer out everywhere they see anything. It had gone. It's very unusual, but it had gone from my kidney cancer had gotten all the way into my right testicle, so I lost my right testicle. My other doctor never told me, but I had testicular cancer too. So,
and that's very rare.
And this is a very rare occurrence that this kind of cancer turns into that kind of cancer. But it did happen. But they said everything's fine. Although I feel kind of like half of what I used to be. But anyway, that's another subject for another day, I guess. And I feel good. I feel good. I think, except I can be tired. It's like you're just kind of waiting and you don't know whenever things are going to get straightened out. I think that's probably the most frustrating part of it. So I feel fine. I enjoy. I for over 30 days, I was on a no fat diet. That is like the worst diet you've ever been on in your life. And so she told me that the Big Shot's assistant said, you may need a week to get where you can eat regular food. I said, nah, I don't think so. So and one day I had a steak and I went to Cracker Barrel and got the grandpa's breakfast. So anyway,
how much weight have you lost?
I have no idea. At least 20, 25 pounds. But it'll probably come back. But that's where we are. Any of you have a question or anything I need to mention, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we'll change the subjects and see what else is going on.
Well, guys, just so you know, I told Dad, I said, you can't just blow this thing off. You got to explain to people where you're at. Because as you know, and if you know anything about my dad, he's like, oh, it's flesh wound. I'm fine. I told him, I said, no, they need to hear where you're at. So tell me about tell me about the pain right now. Like what hurts, what doesn't hurt, all that good stuff. Like how close are you getting back to really being back to normal?
Sitting here, my butt hurts worse than anything from sitting around so much. In the bed, when I turn over, I can now turn over to the right and to the left fairly easily. My right leg hurts. I don't know what they did to it, but it's still not right. But my right leg, it got stretched, twisted, but that's where they took a testicle. So I don't know if that's what happened. They jerked me around or what, but that's sore. Other than that, everything else is pretty good. I don't like currently sitting here right now. My heel sitting on the desk. I've got it laid up here on the desk, and I can feel it a little bit when I move around here. I can feel this PICC line. So other than that, I don't feel anything. So I probably feel as good as most of you, except I wish I could wash my face. I wish I could take a bath. And
No, but standing up, is that
when I stand up or sit down, I put more pressure on all the junk that goes on in my guts. And so I feel the stitches. I feel
Gotcha.
they're not stitches anymore. I just feel where there are now bandages on here. And those of you that have been close to our ministry know a lady named Faith in CCMA, who is the Filipino lady from the church I used to pastor. She was there for me at COVID, and she has just taken real good care of me. And so when I don't know that the Emory doctors were going to do what they wanted, Faith immediately got me in to see her infectious disease doctor. So I am, all these wounds are healing up. The other day, the Dr. Master, who is the kidney expert from Emory, she told me within a month you should be all healed up and everything's fine. I don't have to wear my binder or my girdle, which I had to wear a girdle for over 30 something days. And if I go out, I'll put it on. When I preached on Sunday, I put it on. That's just in case I move quickly or were to fall down. Kind of holds your guts in while your abdomen all tries to heal up. But other than that, everything is great. Anything else?
I think we're good.
All right. I wanted to ask a couple of questions of you. There were at least 2 or 3 of you that got taken advantage of by me making some changes or attempting to make some changes with Alignment Ministries. And so I've tried to pay everybody back. And if there's anybody that I owe money, please let me know. I will get you your money and more. I would never take advantage of you. I have no desire to do that. And I hope you know I don't. And so let me know and I will get that money to you as soon as possible. So that's a big deal to me. I would like to ask you to pray for 3 people that I wrote down, and I'm sure there are others y'all could bring up that you all ought to be praying for. Trent Coker will be getting ordained here in just a few days, and Lord willing, I have the privilege of partaking in that.
What day is that?
I don't have my calendar open. He said
Trent Coker, why don't you just open it up and tell us, turn your camera on and tell us what day it is. November the 12th. Thank you there.
That's Robert.
November the 12th.
Whoa, look at that. He speaks. He's alive. He's real. Noah Wilkerson needs our prayer. Their baby has a lot of problems. Noah loves Jesus. He's trying to serve Jesus. And Chris and Andrea know a lot about going through what they're going through, but Chris and I were talking Sunday, and I think her name is, how you say it, Eleni. Eleni is worse than Joshua was. She has a double cleft, and I don't know about her palate, so it's what can I say? It's good. But she has some issues with her heart and some issues with her brain, and I'd ask you to be in prayer. You might consider, I don't know if this is out of place to tell you, because I am nobody with you any longer, but a little love offering. If you set $25, $50, they're living out of in between the hospital and everything, it might be interesting to do something to help them. So that's just a suggestion. I sent more than that, I promise. And so I just think they ought to be loved on a little bit. And then I guess very exciting. Everybody probably knows it because you read it and keep up with it more than I do, or as well as I do. But Austin Teal is leaving for China. Tickets are bought, and that's exciting. And I'm really excited for what God's going to do in their life when they get to China. So would you pray for Trent Coker getting ordained, Noah Wilkerson, and their little daughter, and then Austin Teal getting to China? Would you help us with that in prayer? Are there any prayer requests that I ought to bring up that I have not brought up? Okay. I'd like to I'm going to throw a couple of things at you, and then I've got a list of things I want to talk about. And Chris has some things we want to go over. I've been accused of attacking, in the past, because I would say you're not really working on the language, or you're not really working on raising your support. And some people took offense at that. So what I've now done is really I have worked at writing stories, and I think 64 stories, 65 or 70,000 words, 200 pages of stories that are. I'm just using our love story to try to tell you and give you a little bit of a lesson about things that you need to learn. The one that came out yesterday is about learning how to talk and being alone with Mexicans in an adobe brick, a fire in the floor, and eating food and scared, slapped to death, and having to learn to adapt to culture. I think you ought to read it. Because I'm trying to indirectly say what I would have said earlier in a much more direct route. Learning the language is of such extreme importance. And I think the story before that was about my problems learning a language. I had, I don't know that it's true of me anymore, but I had an extremely extroverted, playful personality. And so everywhere I went, I was liked by the Nationals because I cut up with them. I played with them. I think it's probably hereditary. I got it from my dad. He was a lot like that. And I could cut up and I could play and everything, but I knew I had to discipline myself to learn a language. I have no language ability. Now, by that, I mean, truth is anybody can learn a language. See, we play these games in our heads. So I'll make you mad, and Chris can kind of get in here, but Chinese people learn how to speak Chinese, and Americans learn how to speak English, and Hispanics learn good. There's a kid that's a member of our church, Libertad, who speaks Portuguese, English, and Spanish. Now, Portuguese is basically his first language. His English would be his second best language, and in Spanish sometimes I laugh because he'll throw in some kind of weird little Portuguese thing. But he learned 3 languages, but he doesn't know he's not supposed to be able to do that. He just talks. I think he could learn 5 languages. And so I want to try to help you understand something, because you are not gifted. And I've told the story over and over in the 64 stories I've written so far. I've told the story, I'm not gifted. There are gifted people. I think maybe Gabe's a gifted guy because he's got 3 languages. I'm not gifted. I was told I wasn't gifted in high school, in college, and in language school by experts. But I learned the language enough to communicate. Now, I have an accent, and I don't speak perfectly, but I know how to conjugate the verbs. I know how to do I know how to do the number and gender of nouns and objects and articles. I know how to do all that junk. And so I really want to ask you to read the material, because your money and your skin color does not make up for you talking like a Tarzan. And when you do it, it is racially insensitive. It is arrogant to the hilt that you would treat them like less than you. I'm going to stop. And Chris has a whole different perspective because of the way he learned the language than I do. But I want to challenge you to please pay the price. Chris?
Yeah, I would say that speaking the language is probably one of the, I don't know. I would say speaking the languages is the primary, most important thing that you're going to learn while you're there. Everything rests on the foundation of the B level of missions. If you're talking of missions, the be, do, serve, train, the B level of missions is language. Language is the most important thing that you're going to learn. So I would tell you to be very, very careful to make that a priority. Now, you can only learn a certain amount. You may not be great in the language, but I would tell you that if you, I'm traveling to Warner Robins tomorrow to meet with a prospect that wants to invest money. And I've already been warned by the guy that invited me to go speak with him. He said, you're going to think that he doesn't know anything because he can't speak English with a flip and you can't understand him on the phone. But this guy right here is worth about 15 to 20 million dollars. But you need to know that before you sit down and talk to him, because you're going to immediately assume when you talk to him that he has no ability to invest money, because when he speaks English, his English is so poor. I would tell you to think about that. Think about what was just said to me. They had to, he's basically saying, forgive his language ability, because his language ability screams that he's not smart. His language ability screams that he does not know. So you can be jovial, you can be nice, you can be kind, but make sure that you learn the language the best that you can. The language is the B level of your missionary journey. You have to know the language more than anything else. Nothing is as important as learning the language. You say, well, witnessing is not as important as learning the language. And you say, Chris, you can't say that. No, what you don't understand is this. If you witness and you witness poorly, people will not come to Christ because they can't understand you. Learn the language well. That doesn't mean we don't witness throughout every single day of our life. Every waking moment, we must be willing and able and excited to share Jesus. But at the same time, we have to become experts in the language. The language truly does matter. So as adults, you say, Chris, I don't have the gift of learning a language. Great, that's fine, not a problem at all. But you can, and here's what my daughter's starting to work as a BOA at my office, and I said, Hannah, I'm not asking you to be as good as a veteran BOA. What I'm asking you is to know that you gave every single thing that you had to do as good as you could at being a BOA. And that's what I would tell you. You say, I'm not gifted. I don't care if you're gifted. What I do care is that you put in the work to become good at the language, because that is the B level. Without that level, nothing else can be built on top of it in your missions endeavor. So don't skip over the language. Considering ministry, don't skip over make sure and do everything that you should be doing to learn the language well.
What every one of you need learning the language, and I don't know that you'll listen to me, but you need my mentor that I had in Mexico. I love him beyond words could explain, but the language school teacher that I had was an American, and she was brutal, and none of us liked her because you couldn't say anything. But my buddy might have been worse because he was my friend. She was my teacher. Only had to deal with her 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and at church. And at church, I avoided her. Well, I didn't really avoid her because sometimes I was like, watch me, I'm going to prove her I can talk. But anyway, I was preaching out in the ranch. It's in one of the stories you can look at. It's a farm outside the city of Querétaro, and I am he has allowed me to preach, and so I have written up a 5-minute message, and I probably wasn't ready for it, but I wrote it up. I had it checked. I got all the grammar right, and I preached it over and 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 over all week long to everybody until everybody said I did a good job. So we get out to the ranch and he's there. And the worst thing that anybody can do is tell you how well you're doing in a language. You didn't hear that. But when they tell you you're doing well in the language, it typically means this guy's an idiot and he needs a lot of encouragement. And so I got through preaching my 5-minute message. And then I was pretty proud of myself. And I walked over to my buddy and I said, how did I do? And he looked at me and he goes, you remember in the Bible where Paul said he'd rather speak 5 words in a known language? And I immediately knew what he was talking about. He said, you might ought to consider that. That hurt me to the depths of my soul. I worked at the language all the time. I was out another time with him and a missionary that were in Querétaro at the time I was there, and all day long they made fun of every little mistake I made, and I never cried, but I went to my room, my house. I got back to my house and got out of the car. Didn't say goodbye to me because I couldn't. Went in the bedroom, went in the house, went into the bathroom, shut the door, and could not stop heaving and crying because they had humiliated me all day long. I'm not making that up. You can ask my wife. I was, because I spent so much time with these guys training me, I got picked to be out of about 6 or 7 men, I got picked to be the guy who spoke for a big church. Preach the whole message because I was quote unquote that good. And that day I go out and I go to a gas station and I don't understand what they're saying and they begin making fun of me. And I just want you to know one of the things that God does to you is humble you. He has to break us so that he can use us. And the language is extremely important. And so I would like to challenge you. I spent, and I, with no exaggeration, I spent at least 60 hours a week in Spanish for the time I was in language school. And when I got to Peru, I told them, correct everything I say, even in the middle of my preaching, correct me. Because I knew that if I didn't say it right, I made a real dumb mistake. I want to stop this and let Chris talk about it a little bit, and then we'll change subjects. But I made a real dumb mistake. I was trying to call on this lady to lead in prayer. Of course, she didn't understand the words, and I didn't understand the words, and I didn't know how the language worked. And I shouldn't have called on a lady probably anyway, but that night I said, could you give us the word for prayer and sentence are the same word in Spanish. Oración is a sentence and it's also a prayer. It does it de restar, which is a word that means to repeat stuff. And so I asked her to give a sentence, and she stood up and started giving word testimony. I was like, I didn't ask for that. I'm just telling you, it's harder than you think, but you must pay the price. And I'm telling you something, people won't be honest with you. And I'll just say something about Spanish people. They're the most encouraging people in the world. But when they're encouraging you, most of the time they figure you're about to quit. Now, I'm tell you one more thing. I wasn't going to. I'm going to tell you this. My hero missionary, probably my favorite missionary. He's in heaven. I wish I could have gone instead of him. I think he's far better at being here than I am. Randy Sturwalt. He spoke Swahili. And he lived in a country where everybody speaks English and Swahili. Not everybody, but English is a national language because it was a conqueror's language. Brother Randy had no respect for a missionary who couldn't speak Swahili. And I was shocked because I knew that missionaries in Africa often didn't do that, but Brother Randy did. So I just want to challenge you, learn the language. Chris, I have beat that horse so that everybody's ready to kill me. So go ahead. And anybody might have a question, please send it.
I would say, I'm sorry, my sugar's going low and I didn't eat breakfast, so I'm eating breakfast while we're doing this. So I would say we tell missionaries not to jump the gun and go to the mission field without support. And if you have been around missions at all, you know that people go back and are like, man, that was so dumb to do that. You know, I should have just raised a little bit more money. I should have, that's kind of what tends to happen. In the same way, it's as big or bigger of a mistake to try and jump into ministry when you can't speak the language. And David Gardner is working with two missionaries in Peru that are on the exact opposite side of the spectrum. And one of them is extremely gifted in language learning. And the other one's not. But both of them have decided to do whatever it takes to learn the language. And so, that's one of the things I'm very thankful for those guys. When I was down there with them not too long ago, we were discussing one of them, Mitch is like, nope, I'm just going to work hard. I got to keep working. I've got to work. I've got to learn. That's his mentality was, I want to do whatever it takes to learn the language well. And he's doing very well in the language, but it's because he reminds me of my dad. He's just like, no, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to know the language. I would tell you not to get so thirsty for the pulpit and not to get so thirsty for your ministry to be developed that you do not do what you need to do on the language learning. That is a vital part of what you're doing going forward. So.
Well, you got me. Trent Coker just texted me and said that somebody told him, I was told by another missionary the other day that men over 30 could not learn another language. It's too late. Then I think the guy who told you that should stay home. I was born in 1954. I arrived in Mexico in 1987. And so 54 to 87 puts me at 32. I turned 33 that year.
And I would, and people that don't speak Spanish do not understand how well you can do in a language without having the knack for it. I wish there was some way to explain it to you. My dad has an accent for sure. I can get on the phone and people think I'm Peruvian. David can get on the phone, Joy can get on the phone, and people think they're Peruvian. Dad doesn't have that. But what you must understand is that my dad knows the Spanish language better than 95% of Peruvians. He'll say, "Oh, well, that verb is this way because of this reason." And like, if I have Spanish questions, I call my dad up and I'm like, so what I'm saying is this: you don't have to have a gift of language to be able to become good at a language. You have to have the decision in your mind. If God's called me to do this, then God has called me to do this, and I can and I will learn the language to the best of my abilities. I may never get to the point to where I can get on the phone and somebody thinks I'm a Peruvian, but who cares? I will do the best that I can. And so, Trent, you're over 30. What I would tell you is this: you can easily learn a language. We've watched many people learn a language and learn a language well over the age of 30. But it may just take a lot of hard work. And so everybody else gets done in 2 years. I'm telling you, the person that inspires me the most in language learning is Mitch McCormick. You ought to call Mitch and you ought to talk to him. He's like, no, I work my tail off. I do whatever it takes. I spend time with people. I have people correcting me all the time. If you tell Mitch to do it, he's going to do it. Now, Josh is just really good at the language, and he'll have different struggles, but it's going to take it's just going to take a decision of you saying, this is what I'm going to do. So, but don't underplay the power and the importance of a language. Do not there's no way to explain to you how important the language is. I want you to think about this for a second. How many of you would be willing to be taught and learn from somebody who had a very heavy Indian accent that's going to sit down and teach you, that's going to teach you the Bible? Well, I want to teach you eschatology. I would like to teach you eschatology. You're just not going to do that. You're not going to do that. So you better make sure that you get as good as you can in the language so that people can understand you and you can speak their heart language. You can laugh with them. You can cry with them. So truly understand what is going on. The language really, 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 really matters.
Trent, I would like to say to you about this language issue that the person who told you that needed an excuse. And so, fat people can't lose weight. Weak people can't get strong. People that can't read can't learn to read. I mean, there's always plenty of excuses. And so I would tell you that. I was before the surgery. Can't even remember where I was reading. But I talked about a guy who had sheepdogs. And he bred sheepdogs, and said that when the little puppies were born, he always marked the runt of the litter, and he would then sell off everything but the runt, and he always kept the runt for himself. And he's made the comment. He said the runt had to fight for everything he got, so he worked harder, pushed further, did more. So he was always the best dog. And he said the big dog gets what he wants. The runt fights for it. Well, here's what I'd say about Mitch McCormick, based on what Chris and David are saying. And this is what I'll say about me, and I'll say it about you. Hey, us runts in the language, if we fight hard enough, we'll get there. And I'd like to ask you to talk to Austin Teal. Austin Teal made the comment the other day. Well, it's been a year ago, 2 years ago. I don't know when. But he said, in Spanish, y'all got all those verbs. We don't have to deal with that stuff. He said, I ate yesterday, I ate today, I ate tomorrow. And he said, I eat, he eat, she eat, they eat, we eat. It's all the same. He said, I don't know how I'd learn all those. And he was trying to get it across to you. What happens is you're making excuses. And I think that Austin Teal, you're going to China. I think Austin Teal could help you learn the language. And I would like to challenge you to take that. All right. I know I've talked about this a lot. Anything else there?
No, I think that's very, very good. And I would bet $10,000 that my dad could learn another language right now if he wanted to. It's not an age thing. He's not going to sit there and take the place of Alexander Scorby in whatever language he decides to read and reading the Bible in that language, but he could learn at the age of 68 without any issues at all. I do
believe I can learn another language.
Yeah, and I know you could. Like, there's no doubt. It's just a matter of, it's a decision. I will learn a language. So anyway, just do not take defeat in the language. Do not decide that you're willing to go on when you only are at a 40% speaking rate of the language. That truly matters. You want people to listen to you and to say, oh, that guy. Here's the deal. It's impossible to understand someone if you don't speak their language. It is 100% impossible to understand someone if you don't understand their language. By the way, the best representative of this is the King of Kings that came down and took on our clothing and took on our body and took on our language and took on every single thing about us and came down to be one of us, and then to die on the cross for us. But that would not have happened if he could not communicate. So just understand how important it is. Please make it a big deal. Please make it a big deal, because here's what's going to happen. What I've seen happen many times is when people would go to Peru and we put hundreds of people through the language school, they would start and they were like, okay, I can preach now. I can preach for 5 minutes. And they would preach for 5 minutes and they'd never ask questions. They got comfortable making stupid mistakes. Their comfort making stupid mistakes ended up making them speak stupidly for the rest of their ministry, because they weren't allowed, they weren't taught to go along that process. And so for the rest of their life, you're not going to send Bubba up to Boston to help the people in Boston and him go, well, I went down there and saw my pickup truck and went over. They're not going to listen to that. You have to make sure, even in English, we understand that. So please understand the importance of this. Decide. There's nothing that is going to make me change my decision that I will learn the language to the best of my ability. If you can't learn well, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to put the work in to do whatever I can to make things happen. So that's it for me.
I wasn't going to add more, but I can't help it. Number one, you got to be harder on yourself than anybody else is. Your wife says you're doing well. Nah, it's okay. Don't listen to her. Your children say you're doing well. Your friends say you're doing well. Nobody wants you discouraged, but you have got to get up. Excuse the secular, worldly. Rocky Balboa needed the eye of the tiger. He had won the fights. He had become comfortable. And Apollo Creed takes him back to the ghetto and helps him learn to get the eye of the tiger. And what your problem is you came off a deputation and you've done well and you're loved in America and you don't really think you have to fight to get it. You must be hard, Trent. You must be hard on yourself. No matter what it takes, you must be hard on yourself. Number two, stop being stupid and learn to read the crowd. Learn to read the crowd. That means when you say something, you should be able to look in their faces and see if they really got it or not. The guys who can't speak the language are naive. They're foolishly stupid. They say something and people don't get it. I was in Peru. Mexico, and my truck motor had blown up, and I was going with the other Americans, and we were going to stores trying to find all the parts we needed. And I walked into the store, and the guy said, "I don't have it." And I said, "Can you tell me where to get it?" And he was telling me where to get it. And I'm looking at his eyes, and they're not looking at me; they're looking across my shoulder. And I kept saying, "I don't know if I understand where you're telling me to go." And so we walked out the door. He wouldn't keep talking to me. He just quit talking to me. So we walked out the door, and I turned to my friend and I said, "Were you shaking your head yes and smiling the whole time?" And he said, "Yes, I was." I said, "I never got where we were supposed to go. Did you?" He said, "No." He said, "I felt stupid just standing there." And so you got to learn to read the crowd. You got to learn to read the room. A good preacher knows that people are getting it. And so watch their faces. Do they really, really understand you? Does the light come on in their head that says, "I got that, I understood that, I learned that"? Or are they sitting there going, "I don't get that"? And then here's my third little rule. And then I'll hit a couple other things, but here it comes in. Trent, you're leaving. So I'm talking to you, Trent. Change teachers and environments often. Now, you won't be in charge of changing your teacher if you're in a good language school, because you should not be allowed to pick who teaches you. But what you can do is change environments. So let me explain something to you. Trent, talking to you like it's just me and you here, but you can understand your children and I can't. And your wife can understand your children when you can't. When they're little like that, well, they're a little bit bigger now, but when they're really little, you remember that? Kid comes into you. Chris was terrible. When he was little, I couldn't understand a word he said. And he'd come in there and and I'd be like, oh, Lord help me, Jesus, what in the world? And his mother would say, this is what he just said. And I'd be like, okay, I didn't get a word of that. Well, it doesn't take long till brothers and sisters, moms and dads, grandparents learn to understand. But the mailman doesn't understand. The UPS man doesn't understand. If you go to the same restaurant every week and you order the same food every week, you're not getting better in the language. The waiter he knows what you want. And he wants a good tip. You have to change environments. I was in Mexico and my buddy Alberto is heartless. And on the night before the final test of the whole year, and we're going to leave school and go back to the United States and move on down to Peru, he came to me and he said, I want you to take us 4 hours, 5 hours away to a soccer game. And he said, I had a Suburban, and he said, I'm going to put 8 Mexicans in the truck, and we're all going to ride over there and watch the ball game and come back. I said, I got a final test tomorrow. I can't do that. He said, oh, you can. He said, where are you going to learn more Spanish? With me and all these Mexicans, or with a book? And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go with you. And so we rode over to Guadalajara. When we arrived in Guadalajara, there was no GPS. So I looked over at him and I said, how do I get to the stadium? And he said, I don't know. Why don't you pull over and ask somebody how to get there? And I said, I'll pull over and you ask. He said, no, I'm not asking, you're asking. All the Mexicans in the truck are just laughing at me. We pull over, I open the door, lower the window, and I look out and I said to the guy, could you tell me how to get to the stadium? We're going to the soccer game tonight. And the guy started talking. I didn't understand a word he said. So I looked at him, I listened, I wasn't getting it. So I turned to Alberto and I said, I hope you got that because I didn't get a word of it. He said, well, then you better ask him again. I said, did you understand it? He said, he's not talking to me. And I didn't understand a word he said. And Alberto said, you've got to learn to hear different. He said, I understand you, you understand me, but you're going to Peru. I'm not going to be there. So you got to change environments, and you got to be hard on yourself, and you got to learn to read the crowd, and stop carrying. When you get there, Trent, do not have somebody who becomes your safety belt, your security blanket. You don't need to be Linus and say, I can't go anywhere unless I take George with me because George protects me. You won't learn the language that way.
Yeah. And can I say that I believe that the main way that missionaries fell in this is they don't read, you said they don't read the crowd, which is vital to understand that. But the truth of the matter is they don't know how to read a crowd, because when they first started deputation, they didn't know how to read a crowd. It wasn't part of their DNA. They didn't even understand how to go about doing that. And they stunk at preaching and they stunk at connecting. And then it didn't take them long until these 3 special messages they preach, they become expert connectors. And so they're connecting with people without any problem at all. Man, everything's going great. I'm just awesome. And you're doing great with that. But what you don't understand is you become lazy at realizing whether you're connecting well or not, because then you become such a master connector because that's all you've done. And it doesn't take much because you literally preach 3, 4, 5 messages. That's all you ever preach. And so you're able to connect, and man, you connect so well. Then you arrive on the field and you take those 5 messages and you start using those 5 messages, and the ability to master connect might even translate to a certain degree with those 5 messages, but then you're not paying attention to the people. So you have to go back to what it was like when you first started on deputation and go, okay, I'm not connecting. This is the way I'm going to think through to be able to connect. That really, really matters a lot. And when I say connect, it's reading the crowd. The only people that care about reading the crowd are people who have been communicating for a very long time. So keep that in mind. As you're preaching, as you're teaching, are you connecting with the crowd? Read the crowd. And that's not going to be natural. That will not be natural for you once you're on the field and learning the language. And your mind is so caught up with the language that it's hard. It's a discipline to say, I will be reading the crowd.
Make it a game and do things that no one else does. So Trent, you need to be drawing characters when other people don't want to draw characters. You need to be watching some Chinese television when nobody else wants to watch it. You need to be. In other words, that's what you want to work at. I would buy the newspaper in Chinese with characters. And if I only got one word today, tomorrow I'd get 2. If I only got one character, tomorrow I'd get 2. Austin Teal, I shouldn't talk so much about him because y'all would think something. I love Austin. I love all of you. But Austin Teal can read a Chinese character Bible like he does English. He's pretty good at it. And he never went to language school. But he just learned how to do it. So don't let people make you think you're doing better than you're doing. Always be testing yourself. And so I really am going to try to stop with that. I wanted to give you a prayer request. Brother Ricky Howard sent this in, and he said, I'm late to the game, but we should be signing a lease on a storefront building within the next few days. And he's out in Utah. I think he's in maybe a difficult area. And so he needs our prayer. And I want to ask you to pray for him that God will work in his life and that he will see souls saved and lives changed. I love Brother Ricky. I believe that God is going to do something very special with him. So I'm asking you to pray. So that's Trent Coker, Noel Wilkerson, Austin Teal, and Ricky Howard. That's 4 prayer requests for today that I would ask you to work on. I was asked by Robert Canfield, I believe. Let's see here. He mentioned the fact that how do you use the media and the importance of using the media. Years ago, in my personal ministry, which is nothing, was nothing. And if I have learned anything through all I've been through over the last several years, I have learned that I am nothing more than a Phillips head screwdriver. And so if God has done anything, it has to be him in all glory. I was laying in the bed this morning because I didn't sleep, and I was thinking, I've been such a I'm such a wicked sinner. I think of, I don't think I ever did anything right in my life. This morning I was laying there thinking, there was this duck that was landing on one of my dad's ponds. And I had a .410 shotgun and asked my dad if I could shoot the duck. He said, you can only shoot the duck if you give it a flying chance. He said, you walk up, let it take off, and you shoot it in the air. You don't shoot it sitting on the lake, on the pond. You don't shoot it sitting on the water. That's not fair. And you clean it and cook it. It's okay. And this is how wicked I am. I was just thinking about it. I mean, the devil keeps bringing up every sin I've ever committed. I went out to that pond. First time I walked up there and he took off, I shot. I missed him. That happened maybe once or twice, and that was it. Next time I went out there, about 100 yards away, I got on my belly and I crawled like a soldier, got up to the edge of the pond where I could see over it. He was sitting there. I shot him and killed him in the pond. And when I got home, told Daddy I killed him, he said, "Did you give him a chance?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." I mean, I don't know how you can be any more wicked than me. So God uses us in spite of us. My little ministry, I wanted, number one, my ministry to be training men. And I'll never, ever change from that. I don't think until the day I die. You must train men. Training men is more important than starting churches. You didn't hear that. But if you start a church and have no man, had a friend in a country in South America and in Brazil, actually, and he got to the end of his term and he started a church and he was talking to me. I was with his mission board at that time. And he said, I don't have anybody take my church. And so then he said, I'm not gonna be able to come home on furlough. He wrote his churches and said, I'm not gonna be able to come home on furlough because I can't get anybody to take my church. Then he contacted a Bible college, and the Bible college guy came over, and that guy didn't work out. And finally, when he gave up, he wasn't gonna be able to come home. And one of his brothers, who was also a missionary there, moved over and took over his church. And he was able to come home. And he had a church, but no man. We must train men. You can't start multiple churches without training men. So you got to get your focus right. You guys don't get your focus right. And so that's why you sit on 3 and 4 and 5 years on one church, because you're not training men. Because I think you should pray about that and go look at what Jesus did. Train men. So it's men, media. I love the internet because when the internet first came out, I got a web page before hardly anybody had a web page. Fact is, with the mission board I served with for 20 years, I bought their domain name. I owned it for years. And they said, no, nobody will ever use domains and nobody will ever use web pages. Of course, that turned out to be a joke. But you know, that's like your own printing press. So I'm writing a book and I've got 65,000 words, 75,000 words written, and it's out on the internet right now on Alignment Ministries on Austin's pen. And so you can use the internet. We had it wouldn't work now in Peru, and I'd keep it wouldn't work because when we had that Chris's TV station, there were like 3 TV stations, and the cable was only for the very rich. And so a bored regular Peruvian flipped through 3-4 channels and land on our channel. So we were training men, but we were using the media. And there's so many countries in Africa, I believe you could probably get a TV station. Boy, if I was young and I could do it, I'd go do that. You can't do it in China, but I bet you can in Africa. It's probably not possible in South America anymore. Things have changed so much. But so men, media, and material. And Randy Sturwalk, you ever seen at least the video that they made about him? That office full of material. Randy Sturwalk prepared material that changed men's lives. They still use it today. 3 things: men, media, materials. And so we need to get the gospel to as many people as we can. I was leaving Peru, and it was one of my last days there, and I was at Faith Baptist Church, and I was up on the platform sitting there talking to people as they were milling around. There's several hundred people there, and somebody came up to the front and they said, "Hey, Guillermo, there's somebody here wants to meet you." And I said, "They want to meet me?" They said, "Yeah, they want to meet the gordo, the fat guy." And I said, "Sure." And so they came up to the front and they said, "I've watched you on TV for years, but I know you're leaving to go back to the USA, and I just want to come say hi to you." I got beyond closed doors because I had a television ministry on Chris's TV station. So I would like to challenge all of you to think three main ministries. Every one of you ought to be on the internet. Every one of you ought to get on the internet. And you say, well, nobody's going to. Did you know that the guys in Northern Africa, in those Arabic countries, Saeed is one of my heroes. Do you know that those guys got saved by going to Google and saying, who is Jesus? And I think he came up with one of them women preachers and heard a message and got saved. And I can't remember for sure. I'm probably wrong about that story. So in places where you can, you want to use the media. Now, this is for you, Trent, because you're going to China eventually. I was in China in, what year was that? 1999 maybe. And I was there with a Chinese guy, last name of Wong, which is like everybody's last name over there's like Smith. And we were meeting with a preacher who had a printing press. You got a printing press, and you can give out the gospel here in this country. And he said they moved. Well, as I talked, I found out it wasn't a printing press. It was a photocopier. But the guy was putting together photocopy material to get to the people. And the people that give out the Bible and the people that write gospel material. And today you got logos and the benefits of logos. Boy, I just think you ought to, I bought logos for more than one person. I think you ought to think about helping people like that. Before I change and let Chris start talking on this right here, real quickly, let me just say this. I am going, and I think Robert Canfield's going with me, but we're going to Murfreesboro in December, like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, or 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, whatever it is, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We're actually going to go up Sunday night and get a motel and stay there. And Morris is going to teach on Logos 10, Morris Proctor. And so if any of you are here and you're not busy, it costs some money, but it's well worth it, I think. And I'd like to ask you to go. Chris, men, media materials, logos, whatever you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, so I would tell you that if you can go, you shouldn't have any excuses to not go to Camp Logos. You can literally go to your Wednesday service. You'll be 4 hours from Murfreesboro that you can make it, leave Wednesday early morning if you wanted to, or even Tuesday night. But it's well worth it for you to go.
Wednesday, it's over at noon.
Yeah, Wednesday it's over at noon. And usually the
church.
Yeah, so you ought to consider going, not because he's my friend, but because of the fact that that what you will learn there will be phenomenal for you, and that you're using your main tool. So get used to, know it well. So it's a very good idea to go to that. Let me know if you want to go. I can send you to the website to do that. They've got, I don't know, 50 people signed up already.
Real quick, Chris, if any of you want to upgrade to Logos 10, I think Mo will help you with a little bit better deal.
Yeah, you go to logos.com/MP seminars 10, and you can sign up there. You get a little bit more of a discount, etc. Yeah, and you get 5 free books. Okay, so what we're talking about with Dad, men, media materials, you've got to understand that media is never going to reach the world with the gospel. Media is so necessary, but it's never going to reach the world of the gospel. So, and the reason I say that is this, that you don't, if that's the case, sending people to China make no sense at all. But we can put media out there. We need media. Media is vital, but it's not the key thing. The key thing, the B level on what we do is men. Men are the key to media. Men are the key to material. So we've got to focus on men. Absolutely no doubt about it. People that we can train, that we can teach, that we can help grow. So men, but then from men, I think my dad used to explain it that media was the Air Force coming in. And so That's just the Air Force coming over, gliding over, and attacking from the air. That's what media is. You've got that with the internet. You've got that with TV. You've got that with radio. You've got that with so many different means. And the question isn't how many people are watching TV. The question is how do I send a message out? Because here's the deal. If you can send a message out using an aerial strategy, you ought to do that. The key is this: we send media out, and then we send the media out and we teach people, but then you go, the media is going to push people to the men. Okay. Honestly, it's very difficult to have depth in what you believe just with media. You need materials to make that happen. Materials really does matter. So that's the ground game. These guys are just going in. You have the Air Force coming in and attacking, and that's necessary. But then you have the ground game. You have the Army moving in and doing their thing, and that's the materials. You need that. And I asked Randy Sterwalt for a picture, and he sent me a picture of the materials that he had prepared. Vital to have these materials. And so men and then, but the materials, guess what it's going to lead people to? Materials can't take the place of men on the ground. If it did, then I don't know why we're sending people to China if we can just print stuff and send it out and let people get it, and we can just drop it in bathrooms and put tracts are not going to revolutionize the world. Should you pass out tracts? Sure. Should you share the gospel through that? Absolutely. But that material is not going to do the job. The job is all based on the foundational piece of men. So you've got to train men. And then with these men, what you're doing is these men understand the importance of training also faithful men. So men training men, but then focusing as well on the material and focusing as well on the media. So you've got to understand, and you've got to state this. I would departmentalize every single thing that you do into those three sections. How are you training men? How are you doing media? And how are you doing materials? I think those three things encompass everything that we need to be able to truly do what we're called to do.
I think that what Chris has said to you is an exact explanation. It's the men. That's where Jesus spent time. Then the guys came along and put out the material. It's called the New Testament, right? And they used every form of media possible, even going to Mars Hill and presenting it. So we have increased leverage in China, maybe. There's just so many ways to help you get the gospel out. And I would challenge you to do that if you would. Now, I got a question here. It has been suggested to me by another missionary to comb through some Bible colleges here and find some guys that can lead the music and help me speak well when starting my first church. How would you feel about this? Chris, you get your answer ready. I'll give an answer. I would say to you that I don't think that's bad. I don't think that's bad advice. But in language school, I would be trying to find somebody that I could lead to Christ. While you're in language school, you should lead people to Christ that should become faithful members of the church. An intern goes to the mission field through your mission agency, and yet he doesn't leave. At his home church, he didn't leave anybody saved and baptized. On the mission field, he didn't leave anybody saved and baptized. In language school, he didn't leave anybody saved and baptized. Can we guess if he's going to be able to leave anybody saved and baptized in the next step of his ministry? If you didn't kill the lion and the bear, I doubt you can get Goliath, and I doubt the throne will be available to you. So yep. I would like to say to you, yes, I would go to the other college. I think that getting somebody that would help correct your language is vitally important. But when somebody gets a paycheck from you, they quickly learn, if I aggravate him correcting his language too much, I won't get my paycheck. I don't know if you got that. A waiter in a restaurant in Peru, I was a very big tipper because I tipped, and Peruvians at that time did not tip hardly at all.
and I always did. So when I walked into a restaurant, I pretty well always owned it, and the waiters fought over me. The other missionaries learned the same, and they all enjoyed the same privilege. But I could walk in and you could hear them say, he's going to want ice. And somebody would run down the street and buy a bag of ice. And they would do whatever it took because they knew I was probably going to give them 10%. And I often paid as much as a week or a week and a half's wage as a tip on a meal for several people. You need to remember that some of you are hiring people to run around with you, and they become your lackey. They become your shoe shine boy. They become, I need to say whatever the boss wants me to say so I can get my paycheck. And that's something I want to remind you about in the language. My friend Alberto was brutal. He had no mercy. The story I wrote yesterday is so true. He knew what was going on in me, and his wisdom was extremely beyond everything, but he was working me. And so I want to challenge you. Yeah, go to the Bible college, get a guy to help you with the music. That's probably a good idea, especially if you're not good at music. Help somebody.
Especially if you live in the state, especially if you live in the States too. You know, that like if Ricky Howard were to ask that, it would sound different, you know.
So I just think that you want to be real careful. I want to be real careful that people aren't just saying what you want said because you pay them. You know, the rich man has many friends. That's what the Bible says in the book of Proverbs. I realized something. A little over a year ago, I had tons of friends. And then one day when they couldn't get anything from me, they no longer cared to even speak to me. And so I want to remind you that those people that are like kissing your behind are doing it because of what they can get from you. They don't really love you. And that's where the Peruvian people had a saying. When I was a young man in Peru, and the question was basically, do they love the pig or they love the bacon? Do they love you or they love what they can get? I don't know if that makes any sense. Chris, you can kind of fix that for me.
Yeah, so I think a good starting point might be able to be using people like I know we've had Justine went to Argentina, and he went to, you know, to Ecuador before that, and he's in Peru. Those are good things, but what you have to be very careful with is that if you're not careful and you're living in Spanish South America, the Peruvian Bible College can become your crutch to where you don't have to do what you need to do to grow your church. And so just keep that in mind. It's literally you're sitting there and you're going, well, I can with a Peruvian Bible College, I can. And yes, you can, but if you do, it's going to hurt you because your job is to train men. So you might start a certain way. It's a jump start. It's putting those jumper cables on, getting the car started. It's a good jump start, but you need to make sure that you're focused on doing way more than that. To get people together, to train people, etc. Because if you're not, it's going to hurt you in the long run.
I think that's extremely vital and important information. And I think it's not bad to get somebody to help you, but a guy that's trained by Asa Gardner, that loves Asa Gardner, is going to want to do it Asa Gardner's way. And when he goes to work for Chris Gardner is going to be like, I really love my dad, but I don't like the way he does that. And so you can use them as a stopgap measure to help you, but you're going to want men and women you trained. And so I want to challenge you to be training all you can. I love you guys very much. I'd like to remind you, go read the stories. All you got to do is go to Alignment Ministries and then go to our ministries and go to Austin's Pen. You go down and click on Austin Pen, and then if you'll do a search for Betty, you'll bring up all the stories about Betty and our love story. Go the farthest one down at the bottom and work your way all the way back up to the top any way you want to do it. I want to see you be a success. I want God to work in your life, and learning the language is crucial. Paul Revere gets nowhere without a horse. And the language is the horse. And if Paul Revere had not been able to ride that horse, he would have not got everybody ready for the British are coming. And your problem is Jesus is coming, but you ain't even got a horse to get the message out with. So if you're not going to learn the language, you might want to come back to the United States and work here somewhere where you already speak the language. Not trying to be ugly. Then I remind you of men, media, and materials. I remind you of men, media, and materials. And I love you, and I thank God for you, and I'm just praying that things go well for you. Chris, anything final before we close down today?
No, I say we keep people in our prayers that we've discussed, the Wilkersons, Trent Coker. I'm always encouraged by Brother Thomas. He's always sending me stuff that's going on in Africa. Be praying for him and what's going on there. Be praying for Utah and for the ministry there. Be praying for Trent, who's about to leave for the field. Just this should be a brotherhood. It's a family, people that will love each other, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to help people get the gospel out. So I'm praying for you guys, love you, and asking God to do some great stuff through you.
You'll probably not know this, but I've not one time since we've been doing this spoken to you in a t-shirt. But I did it, but I don't even get to take baths. Man, you guys are lucky you're listening to me from a distance. I don't really think I smell, but I am so tired of this. So y'all pray for me if you would. I'm not trying to be selfish and ask for prayer too much, but I'd like to get over this, and I want to make some trips, and I have one trip planned for next year and it's been canceled. But we're trying to plan some more trips, and so let me know what I can do. Pray for me and pray that God will get me through all this. And thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to